Ever get that feeling where your brain just stalls? Like you're stuck in neutral, everything just feels a bit meh.
Yeah, that feeling.
Well, that's what we're diving into today. Boredom. We've pulled together some really interesting research, psychological stuff, even brain scans.
Right, to really unpack the surprising role this very common feeling plays.
So our mission for you listening is to get a handle on what boredom actually is, why it pops up, and maybe find some, well, unexpected upsides.
Hmm.
Moving past just thinking it's bad, we've got quite a range of sources here.
Exactly. We want to kind of flip the script on it, see it less as a negative, more as, well, something else.
Okay, so let's start simple, or maybe not so simple. What is boredom, fundamentally? It's not just like having an empty schedule, is it?
No, not at all. It's really subjective deep down. It's that sense of dissatisfaction, right? A lack of interest in what's happening right now, either the activity or just the
Like your
surroundings.
brain saying, nope, not interested.
Basically, yeah, this isn't doing it for me, that kind of
Right.
thing.
And it tends to drag other feelings along with it, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. When you're bored, your attention starts to drift, maybe your mood dips.
You get fidgety.
Yeah, and sometimes a bit impulsive. And interestingly, the sources we looked at also connect boredom to things like uh, anxiety, frustration, even feeling lonely, those underlying currents.
Hmm. So we kind of know what it feels like,
Yeah.
but what triggers it? What are the causes?
Well, our research points to a few main culprits. One big one is monotony. When things are too simple, too repetitive.
Not enough mental stimulation.
Exactly. Your brain isn't getting enough to chew on. Think of it like a psychological hunger, like you said, craving stimulation.
Right, stuck with just crackers when you need a proper meal.
Duh.
But wait, you can also get bored if things are too hard, can't you? That seems weird.
It does, but yeah, absolutely. If an activity or environment feels way too complex or just beyond your current abilities, that can trigger boredom too.
How so?
It's like a psychological pressure, maybe trying to follow a super technical explanation that's just going over your head. Your brain might just check out, tune
Okay.
out, because it's too much effort with too little reward.
Mental overload causing a shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and there was a third factor, something about meaning.
Yes, precisely. If what you're doing doesn't connect with your own goals, your values, if it just feels pointless to you.
Then boredom can set in.
That's right. It's a kind of psychological imbalance, that lack of personal investment, that why am I doing this feeling.
Okay, so boredom isn't just, being lazy or needing a hobby. It sounds like it's functional, like it's trying to tell us something.
That's one of the most interesting takeaways, I think. Boredom acts as a signal, an internal alert.
Like a low battery warning for your engagement level.
Exactly. It's not laziness. It's a prompt, a nudge from your brain saying, hey, let's switch gears, find something more engaging or, more meaningful.
A signal for change. I like that framing. So it actually serves a purpose. It's not just an annoying feeling we have to endure.
Yes. It can be a surprisingly powerful motivator. It can push you to seek out new things, learn something different, develop skills,
Or even create something.
or create something new, absolutely. It can also be a trigger for self-reflection, making you think, okay, what do I actually care about? What gives me a sense of purpose?
And speaking of creating things,
Yeah.
you mentioned a link between boredom and creativity. That sounds completely backwards. How does that work?
Well, there was this fascinating study. They had one group of people do a really, really dull task, just copying phone numbers out of a book.
Sounds painful.
Right. But afterwards, that group came up with significantly more creative uses for a pair of plastic cups compared to a control group who hadn't done the boring task.
Get out. You'd think the boredom would just numb your brain.
That's the surprising part. The theory is that when your mind isn't laser focused on something demanding, it kind of wanders. It allows for daydreaming, for making connections you wouldn't normally make.
So the lack of external focus frees up internal processing for new ideas.
It's sort of like that. It helps you think outside the box, stumble upon new possibilities because your brain isn't stuck on one track.
Okay, so while it feels like we're zoning out neurologically, what's actually going on in our heads when we're bored? Is the brain just powering down?
No, not at all. It's definitely not shutting down. Research using things like EEG, which measures brain waves, like tracking electrical storms in your head, and fMRI scans.
Which track blood flow, showing active areas.
Exactly, like seeing which roads are busiest in the brain. This research shows it's more about the interaction between two major brain networks.
Okay. Which networks are we talking about?
So first you have the cortex, parts of it anyway, which are geared towards detecting important stuff happening outside external stimuli demanding attention.
Like a loud noise or something visually interesting.
Right. And then you have the default mode network, or DMN. Think of this as your brain's internal chatter, where your mind wanders, you daydream, reflect on yourself, your memories, your future.
Okay. The me network. So how do these two play together or not play together during boredom?
Well, what they find is that during boredom, these two networks become negatively correlated,
Meaning?
meaning when activity in one goes up, activity in the other tends to go down. So the brain is kind of oscillating. It's actively searching for something worthwhile externally.
That's the cortex trying to engage.
Yes, but it's also prompting us internally, that's the DMN kicking in, perhaps making us aware of the lack of engagement and nudging us to figure out what would be engaging. It's not idle, it's searching internally and externally.
Wow. Okay. So it's an active state of dissatisfaction and searching.
Oh.
How can we pinpoint then, okay, this is boredom. What are the key signs?
There are a few classic indicators. Feeling kind of empty-headed, maybe, like your mental horsepower isn't being used.
Understimulated?
Definitely. Time often feels like it's slewing down, stretching out.
Oh, yeah, the clock watching feeling.
Exactly. Difficulty concentrating is a big one. Whatever you are doing feels, well, meaningless or pointless.
And there's that weird physical feeling too, isn't there?
Yes. That strange mix of feeling lethargic, like you have no energy, but also restless, like you want to jump out of your skin. It's that idling engine feeling, again, burning fuel, but going nowhere.
Perfectly put. Now, does this feeling hit us the same way throughout our lives? Or does it change?
It does seem to change. The research suggests boredom generally increases from infancy right through adolescence, maybe peaking around 18 or so.
Teenagers being bored. Shocking.
Right. Then it tends to decrease during most of adulthood, say up until around age 60. And then it might start to creep up again for some people later in life.
That's a really interesting pattern. Why the rise in childhood and teens, then the dip, then another potential rise?
Well, for kids, they have this intense drive to explore, but their abilities are limited, and obviously parents need to keep them safe, which can be frustrating.
So limits create boredom. Makes sense. What about the drop in adulthood?
As the prefrontal cortex matures in young adulthood, that's the brain's planning and self-control center, maybe that constant craving for external novelty decreases a bit. Plus, adult life often comes with responsibilities. Work, family.
Less unstructured time.
Less time for boredom to even set in, yeah. The complexities keep you engaged, or at least occupied.
And the potential rise later in life, after 60.
That could be tied to major life changes. Things like retirement, maybe kids leaving home, changes in social networks, or even health issues potentially limiting activities and engagement.
So it seems like our internal drive and how engaged we are externally play a big role. Are some people just naturally less prone to boredom?
It appears so. The sources suggest that individuals with higher levels of self-drive and self-direction tend to experience less boredom.
People who are good at motivating themselves.
Yeah. They generally have better self-control, they can focus for longer, and they're often committed to tasks they see as important. They kind of generate their own engagement.
They have that internal compass.
Exactly. Whereas people who perhaps struggle more with self-control might be constantly seeking external fixes, new stimuli, avoiding anything challenging, which makes them more vulnerable to boredom when those external things aren't available.
Okay, so ignoring boredom or just trying to constantly distract ourselves from it. Sounds like that might not be the best strategy. It can actually have some real downsides, can't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's more than just feeling a bit fed up. Think about attention lapses.
Right, you mentioned a story.
Yes, a really serious one about Northwest Airlines Flight 188. Apparently, the pilots, during a long stretch of automated flight, got so profoundly bored.
On autopilot, literally and figuratively.
You could say that. They became distracted, missed radio calls. Some reports suggest they might have even nodded off, and they completely overflew their destination airport by like 150 miles.
Wow. That is sobering. That shows the actual danger of boredom-induced inattention in high-stakes situations.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it? And it's not just about attention. There are links to physical health, too. Well, studies have found that people who rate themselves as easily bored are also more likely to choose unhealthy foods. Junk food, basically.
The boredom munchies?
Pretty much. One experiment specifically found that people doing a super boring task, just writing the letters CD over and over, ate significantly more snacks compared to people doing something interesting.
Why is that? Is it just comfort eating?
It could be partly that, but researchers suggest a couple things. One idea is that boredom feels kind of depleting, tiring, so we crave quick energy, sugar, fat.
A quick fix for feeling drained.
Right. Another possibility is that the prefrontal cortex, trying to get us out of this boring state, urges us to do something, anything. And eating is easy, accessible, and provides immediate, if temporary, pleasure.
A readily available distraction that feels good for a moment makes sense.
Yeah.
And I imagine it doesn't stop at just food choices.
No, sadly. Boredom is also linked with a higher risk of addictive behaviors, things like smoking, problem gambling, drug misuse.
Seeking a bigger dopamine hit to escape the feeling.
That seems to be the driver. That increased impulsivity, the need for immediate gratification to break the monotony. Some sources even suggested links to impulsive, sometimes violent behavior.
Goodness. The ripple effects are much wider than you'd initially think. What about mental health?
There's a really strong connection noted between boredom and depression and other mental illnesses, too.
How are they related?
They share a lot of emotional overlap feelings like apathy, not finding pleasure in things, anhedonia, a sense of meaninglessness. Some research even suggests chronic boredom can be a warning sign, potentially preceding a depressive episode. When the mind isn't engaged, negative thoughts can surface more easily.
Okay, this is really driving home the point that we need to address boredom, not just ignore it. So what can we do? What are some practical strategies? Maybe starting with work.
Yeah, the workplace is a big one. Finding work that gives you a sense of accomplishment that feels meaningful to you is huge.
Feeling like you're making progress, contributing something.
Exactly, and having some autonomy helps a lot. Freedom over how you approach tasks. Remember that study. Workers who could choose their own break times.
They were more productive and less bored.
Yes, so that sense of control matters. Also, the difficulty level needs to be challenging enough to be engaging, but not so hard it's overwhelming. The Goldilocks zone of challenge.
Not too easy, not too hard.
Precisely. So maybe companies could look at more flexible schedules, and as individuals, we need to actively seek out the engaging parts of our jobs or find ways to make them more meaningful.
Be proactive about finding satisfaction.
Definitely. Think about James Watt's steam engine operator. Instead of just passively doing a boring, repetitive job opening and closing valves.
He invented an automatic system.
He did. His boredom literally sparked innovation. He solved his own problem.
That's brilliant. A great example of boredom as a catalyst. Okay, what about outside of work? In our daily lives?
Cultivating long-term rewarding activities is key. Things you genuinely enjoy and invest time in.
Hobbies, skills.
Yeah, learning a new skill like coding or painting, playing an instrument, getting into a physical activity like running or climbing, volunteering. Things that align with deeper interests.
Why are those longer-term things better than just, say, scrolling social media?
Because when we engage in activities that fulfill these deeper desires, activities that often require effort and show progress, our brains release dopamine in a more sustained way. It's linked to lasting happiness, not just fleeting pleasure.
Ah, the dopamine system. So achieving something effortful triggers it.
Yes, things like improving your fitness, mastering a difficult piece of music, helping others. These activities tap into that system. They can lead to states of flow where you're fully immersed and build a sense of purpose and fulfillment.
So it's about finding that satisfying engagement, that sense of mastery.
Yeah.
Now, shifting gears a bit, one source brought up the philosopher Schopenhauer. How does he fit into tackling boredom?
Ah, Schopenhauer. Yes, that's a really different angle. He had this idea that art offers a temporary escape from the suffering of existence.
Sounds cheerful.
Haha. Well, he saw life as driven by this constant, blind, striving force he called the will, which inevitably leads to dissatisfaction. And he also talked about the principle of sufficient reason, basically, our normal way of understanding the world through cause and effect, time, space.
Okay, so life is striving and understanding cause and effect. How does art help?
Schopenhauer believed that when we truly contemplate art, really look at a painting, listen deeply to music, engage with poetry, we can temporarily silence the will. We step outside that cause and effect way of thinking and achieve a state of pure, will-less knowing.
A mental timeout from desire and logic.
Kind of. He thought art reveals the underlying timeless ideas with a capital I, the essential forms behind the messy world of appearances. Things like the essence of humanity or nature, independent of change.
So art connects us to something deeper, beyond the everyday grind.
That was his view. He saw it as a way to momentarily transcend the mundane, the striving, and yes, the boredom that comes with it. He contrasted it with science, which deals with how things happen, while art reveals what things fundamentally are through this pure contemplation.
Did he have favorites? Art forms he thought were better at this.
He did have a hierarchy, yeah. He put architecture at the bottom, revealing the most basic objectifications of the will, like gravity and rigidity. And he placed tragedy, especially in drama, at the very top.
I like tragedy.
Because he felt it most fully revealed the difficult truths about human nature and the suffering inherent in existence. This idea, by the way, heavily influenced Nietzsche later on, particularly his embrace of life's difficulties, the Dionysian spirit.
So for Schopenhauer, engaging deeply with art is one path away from the cycle of desire and boredom. Did he offer any others?
He did. His other main path was much more extreme, radical asceticism, basically renouncing all desires to extinguish the will altogether. But aesthetic contemplation was the more accessible route he discussed.
Okay, so maybe not total renunciation, but appreciating art could be a strategy against boredom from his perspective.
Interesting.
It adds another layer, doesn't it? Beyond just finding a new hobby.
It really does. So wrapping this all up, it seems boredom is this, well, common but surprisingly complex feeling.
Absolutely. It's rooted in our basic need for stimulation, for meaning, and it reflects this intricate dance between different parts of our brain.
And crucially, it's a signal, right? A signal for change. It can even spark creativity.
Yes, but we also saw that ignoring it, letting it fester, can lead to real problems with attention, health, mood.
So for you listening, the big takeaways seem to be actively find work and activities that genuinely engage you, things that provide that sense of accomplishment or meaning.
Cultivate those rewarding long-term hobbies, and maybe, just maybe, spend some time really looking at art or listening to music and see what happens. Consider Schopenhauer's angle.
Lots of potential avenues to explore. Definitely. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Think back to the last time you felt really, truly bored. Just sit with that memory for a second.
What was that feeling trying to tell you?
Exactly. What unmet need, what unspoken desire might have been lurking beneath that feeling of, meh, something to ponder long after this deep dive is over.